Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Today, we continue to lay our performance foundation by talking about motivation and why, a topic particularly appropriate as we start New Year's resolutions and everything like that. Whether we approach motivation from the classic perspective of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, subsequent architectural additions and alterations to his pyramid, or modern non hierarchical theories such as those proposed by the economist Manfred Max Neef, the underlying framework of these models is a generalization of internal values, the human why, and how we prioritize them. When we talk about performance, our interest is in identifying individual internal values and priorities, our individual why, such that we can align our actions with those values. These internal values and the connection of action with them are what drive us and are the core of motivation. The better we understand our values and align our actions with them, the more strength we have to overcome obstacles and challenges that might otherwise stop us from a pursuit entirely. Briefly, I want to differentiate between goals and values, as both indicate that something is important to you. Values guide our behaviors, our goals, our life choices. They are a direction toward who we want to be. Goals, on the other hand, are measurable, achievable, and time-based. For instance, you might have the goal of achieving the next rank in a particular competitive game. The values underlying that could be any combination of self-mastery, improvement, seeking a sense of fulfillment, or demonstrating your skill. Those values have no specific timeline, no specific endpoint, and instead will continue to inform future goals and actions even after you reach that next rank. Anytime we take an action, we are looking to fulfill a set of value-based needs, and gaming is no different. Sometimes we get it wrong, trying to fulfill a need with an action that doesn't fit, and we'll talk more about how that applies to gaming in a future episode on tilt and frustration. What's important is to recognize that gaming can fulfill a variety of needs and fit with many different values. And the easiest way to think about it is to generalize into three main categories: social, the experience, and mastery. These categories are a generalization to help us better understand how to align our actions, but they're not intended to be limiting. You may find that some values overlap, maybe all fall into one category, or the priority category depends on what needs you are trying to meet for a given gaming session. We'll break the categories down further and how to use them in a moment, but first, how do we identify our values? There are many exercises in modern therapy practices to do this in a broad way that is a bit beyond the scope of this podcast. For those of you interested in tackling values identification in a more holistic way, I'll have links posted both in the episode description, and for those supporting through Patreon, you will also have access to a video where I go through a couple of these exercises myself, giving more insight into the thought process and providing inspiration for how to approach the exercises in a healthy way. For now, though, let's focus on the main exercise I use for esports in particular, though any gamer can put this to good use with a little creativity. On paper, it's relatively simple. Set of 3 questions to answer, and from those answers we will distill your gaming-related values and more broadly identify the category or categories that are most important to you. There are a couple of key things to keep in mind as you work through this exercise. First, there are no wrong answers. No one can prescribe to you the reason that you game, the reason that you compete. I can help you uncover and refine those values and guide you to take advantage of that knowledge, but I can't decide any of that for you. Second, your answers are going to change over time. You will continue to learn and grow as a person, and your priorities will shift. You aren't locked into these answers for life, and you may even find the first time you go through this that your answers will shift from hour to hour, day to day, as you continue to ruminate on the possibilities. The first time I did this, I was 22, and it took me weeks to figure out my initial answers, and those answers have changed significantly in the last decade of my life. Be flexible and use what feels right to you for now. I highly recommend writing down or typing up your answers and saving them to revisit as you do this exercise in the future. Now, on to the first question. What initially excited you about gaming? What made you get involved in esports? What brought you to try and improve your performance? Everyone starts somewhere with gaming, whether it's being introduced as a kid or discovering it later in life, and the shift to taking it more seriously can occur at any point. Reflecting on the circumstances that made gaming important gives a lot of context for what broader categories were priorities at the time, and connecting with that helps us better understand how those priorities have grown and changed. For the second question, imagine yourself as a part of a team. At the end of a season, your teammates are asked about you. What kind of person are they? How do you want your teammates to respond? This question is geared toward competitive games that require a team, whether that game is multiplayer or you have a testing or scrim group to prepare for events. But even if you don't have that, you can use a different context, such as work, school, family, etc. The core idea here is thinking about people around you in a specific context of teamwork and what you ideally want to show them about yourself over the course of a competitive season, a semester, a quarter, whatever unit of measure makes the most sense. How do you want those people to perceive you? What qualities do you hope they've seen? Think about the ideal scenario, but focus things that are actually important to you, not what you think they want you to be like. You can also flip this question and think about what you want to see in your teammates. What is important to you that they do? Sometimes it's easier to identify what is important for us and what we hope from ourselves by thinking about how we hope those close to us act and treat us. For the final question, imagine yourself a few years into your esports experience. You've reached the height of your performance and recognition and accomplished the goals you set out to achieve. Other prominent members around that game and esports scene and you are asked, what were their biggest contributions to the community? How do you want them to respond? What do you want your legacy to be? You can think of this from the broadest context of an esports community to the most narrow of how your gaming journey has shaped you as a person and affected those immediately around you, or even the middle ground somewhere between. For some, it'll lean more toward one end or the other, and many will find that it is a strong mix across the whole spectrum. As you work through these answers, it helps to start sorting out the key points into those three categories. So let's take a closer look at what those are and give some example values within each for a bit of guidance in doing so. But don't let these examples limit you. Remember, this is all about you, the individual, and finding out why you do things. First up, the social category. For almost everyone I've worked with, many of their values fall into the social category. Being engaged with a game instantly gives you common ground and the opportunity to connect with people who are excited and passionate about the same game. In this age, the communities and opportunities are nearly endless. Camaraderie, being engaged with similar interests, meeting new people, teaching and learning, and staying connected can all be values that fall into this category. Then there is the experience. Often there are games that captivate us, that make us want to play because the creators have made art that we want as a part of our lived experience. This includes incredible worlds like Baldur's Gate, or fantastic and innovative gameplay such as Tears of the Kingdom, or exploring the lore behind a game world, even a MOBA like Dota 2 or League of Legends that have a fantastic set of stories behind them. Here it could be the desire to escape, to get lost, to play for the sake of playing, or to be able to talk about the world and your experience of it. And then we have what is likely most important to the majority listening to this podcast: mastery. As mentioned in the previous episode, every game offers us the opportunity to overcome challenges, to compete against ourselves and others. There are many values related to mastery, and while it's easy to sum up by saying that you want to be the best version of yourself, it is best to break it down further to understand what that actually means to you. Do you have a strong sense of accomplishment that comes from improvement? Do you hate losing? Does the next challenge fill you with a mix of dread and excitement? Do you want the opportunity to prove your skill? Values that fall under mastery could include fulfillment, improvement, dissection of systems, overcoming challenges, or even facing your fears. So you've gone through these questions, you've taken a look at where your answers fall. How do you make use of this information? The key is now to take a closer look at the times you sit down to game and become mindful of the times where gaming makes you feel a particular way. We really want to focus on the times where you feel negative, either during or after, frustrated, upset, empty. The times where you are happy, feeling uplifted, accomplished, those are the times where your choice to game is fulfilling a need that it can fulfill. For those other times, we need to figure out why gaming didn't bring you a positive experience. By becoming consciously aware of what games can do and what part of the experience is important to you, you can identify the times where turning to games is not aligned with the values you have. For instance, there are times I turn to games for procrastination, to feel a sense of accomplishment that is missing in other parts of my life, in part because I'm afraid of failure. Those gaming sessions ultimately ring hollow and give minimal opportunity for it to actually be a positive experience. In order to practice what I know gives the best outcomes, I seek to game with a purpose. I know the values that I hold related to gaming, related to this podcast, related to other aspects of my life, and I'm intentional in the when and what based on those values. For you, this could translate to gaming only at specific times, only with specific people, or acknowledging that games are a part of relaxation and recovery and treating them properly as such. And for those who are competitive and seeking to improve, where mastery is the key category, you can learn to use your game time in the most efficient way toward improvement and your long-term goals. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the mirror, model, and coaching, and how we need all three of these tools to properly approach performance improvement for mastery before we move on to training schedules, health, and other topics. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out through any of the links in the episode description or through the call-in on Spotify. Thank you all for listening, and may your gaming go well.